Hi, and welcome to You Can Thrive in Sped again. I'm here today with Dan Tricario, and he is also known as the Zen Teacher. And I thought, ooh, all of us special ed people, we need a little Zen in our lives. So he's been teaching for almost 30 years and started the Zen Teacher movement about 5 years ago. So, hi, Dan, how you doing?
Good, Kara. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad we're getting back to a little normalcy in our life in Indiana.
Right.
So it's nice to be able to go a
Yeah, it's
few
crazy.
places.
I don't know when this is going to show, but I've been in quarantine for 8 or 9 weeks. I in desperate need of a haircut, but
Yeah,
this is more
I was able
important.
to go
So,
this week. Yay! That's why I don't have a hat on.
oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so
That's right. Whatever works.
tell us a little about your background.
Well, as you said, I've been teaching for about 30 years, and I actually have been at the same school for the entire time. And in
Mhm.
fact, one thing that I'm always very proud of is I've actually been in the same classroom for all that time. It's really my home away from home, and I just love it. I feel so fortunate to get to teach. It's just, to me, the most amazing job on the planet. So I'm just so happy. And in fact, I teach in the community that I grew up in, and I would have gone to this school except it wasn't around when I was growing up. So as schools go, it's a fairly new school. It's only about 33 or 34 years old.
Wow. What class? What do you teach?
I teach English, and this year I had ninth grade and 12th grade until things just kind of stopped in March,
Yeah.
and now we're kind of trying to wrap up the year and limp along and do the best we can.
Okay. So I know you're here to teach us about the five S's that can help us all keep a little Zen in our life. So I'm going to let you go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you so much. And I just want to say too that again, I really appreciate being here because we had talked when we were setting this up, and I just think that special ed teachers are heroes because I've sometimes heard regular ed teachers say, "Well, they only have 10 kids," or comments like that, and I'm like, "No, you really don't understand. It's an incredibly important commitment, and it's a very powerful and intense commitment that these teachers are making. And if we have 35, 38, 40 students, sometimes having 10 special ed students with the very particular needs that they have is like that. So I'm happy to come here and just make some suggestions on how all teachers can just reduce their stress and improve their self-care, because this is a really important job, and we want to make sure we're our best when we do it. And
Thank you. I'll
the
say a
thing I
collective
thought,
thank
oh,
you.
mhm. Yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's all so important, but I just am really impressed with the people who make that special, extra special commitment to work in special ed. So thank you to everybody out there. And when I thought about what I'd like to share, it was really important to me that we had stuff that you could put into work immediately, that you could immediately implement. So I wanted to talk about something I call the five S's. And we're going to go through each of the five S's, and they are things that you can go out today and start working on. And in fact, some of them I'll talk a little bit about I've already done today, just to kind of make my day a little more, have a little more zen. So this is called the five S's. As Kara said, my name is Dan Tricarico. I was a drama major and a former actor. I've been an English teacher for 29 years. You can see that photo there was taken at my school. I'm a writer, and I'm an educational speaker and consultant because I wrote a book called The Zen Teacher, Creating Focus, Simplicity, and Tranquility in the Classroom. And it definitely shows educators how they can reduce their stress and improve their self-care, because I'll tell you, about 5 years ago, as you said, when I started this, in my department alone, we lost 3 teachers who, for various reasons, just said, I can't do this anymore. And I looked around and I was like, I can't do that. I had about 10 years to go at that point. Now I'm down to about 5. And I said, I need to make it to retirement. And I thought, how am I going to do that? So I started a blog called the Zen Teacher. It turned into this book. And now I go around telling teachers how to help themselves take care of themselves, because this profession always was stressful. but it's become worse, I think, in the last 5 years or so. So we really need a plan. So let's get right
Fabulous.
to it. Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you
Oh, I
say?
said fabulous. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I hope this is helpful. The first S is stillness. And in this go, go, go society that we have where everybody's on the hamster wheel, everybody's on the merry-go-round, we don't value this. We don't talk about it. We don't practice it. And I think it's a good one to start with. And being still is something that we take for granted. And if we stopped and did it, we would see the difference almost immediate in our life. So what do I mean by being still? I mean just stop doing. Just sit down and take a break. Now I know, my daughter who has a very quick wit. She said, "Are you sure you're not just lazy and saying it's philosophy?" But it's not. It's really important sometimes. If you go all the time and you empty the tank and you're running on fumes, you're no good to yourself and you're no good to anybody else. So in the book I say, take a moment and simply stop. Don't do. Say nothing. Don't move. Then notice what you notice. Just be there. Just be present where you are. But most importantly, do it without judgment. Not like I'm still and I feel weird, or I'm still and I really should be doing the laundry, or I'm still and no judgment. Just be still, be in that moment, and you will feel that sense of calm, especially if you practice it. And part of the thing about stillness is that, and the reason I think people don't do it, and I acknowledge this, is that when we're still, sometimes it forces us. It's like late at night, we're still in bed, and then we're kind of forced to deal with what is. And what is sometimes not so pretty, and we don't want to look at it. So we keep busy and we keep distracted and we keep, looking at the shiny objects and everything. So I get that that's the hard part of it. But the more you are still and the more you improve that practice, the more you can look at those things that maybe aren't exactly the way that you want them to be and start to make some changes. So start just 5 minutes, 10 minutes today. Look for an opportunity in your life to just stop, to sit down, to not be thinking about the future or that next thing you need to do, and just be still.
I love
Secondly,
that, Dan.
oh,
It's funny. I was trying to be still before this to get my mind in the right frame without knowing you were going to talk about that. And so I'm sitting on
yeah,
my couch and I've got like 10 minutes. And I'm like, okay, just sit and relax because I was kind of getting a little headache. And I thought, if that gets worse, it's not going to get off your computer. So I'm sitting there and I totally could not be still without judgment. So that's the piece I
yeah.
need to
Well, it's a
get in
reminder,
my head because I'm like, Kara, you have a million things to do. Get up. Like no, I just need to sit here. So thank you for that reminder.
right, and that's all it is. And it's a path for all of us, and we're going to stumble, and it's not going to go perfectly. But again, just to be reminded that being still is good. But if you're consumed by all these thoughts of all the other things that need to happen, it's not really going to help as much. So the second one is silence. And silence, again, is super important, and it's not something we value in this society where there is constant white noise and distraction and chaos going on all the time. I don't know if it's this way around the country and around the world, but I kind of lately have been wondering who decided that there needs to be televisions in every single restaurant I go into.
I
And
agree.
I go in, what?
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know where they came from. And one of my favorite restaurants is a little Thai restaurant around the corner. They have one television way over by the bar, and if you want to go over there and look at it, you can. But where we usually sit for dinner, there's a little flowing fountain, and there's potted plants, and it's just very peaceful and beautiful. So I like that. So I always say that silence is a gift we give ourselves. Nobody is going to do it for you. Nobody's going to do any of these for you. But silence especially is really important for you to do for yourself. This morning, for various reasons, I got up a little bit earlier than usual. And it just was a beautiful morning. And I went and I sat on our back patio. And I was just quiet. And I could hear the birds singing. And there was just this cool mist in the air. It was almost even like a little foggy. And I just sat there and I tuned into my senses and I was like, what can I see? And I looked at our lemon tree and our orange tree and I said, what can I hear? And I heard the birds what can I feel? And I felt my body on the chair. It was just a very meditative moment that was surrounded by this stillness. And I'm so glad I got that today. So just look for those moments where you can just not speak and just not have noise around you. It's hard in this culture that we have, but it's possible.
So, Dan, would you say that stillness and silence should go together?
Absolutely. They absolutely do go together. That's a great connection. And, if you can do both at the same time, of course, that's ideal. I mean, even if like one quick, easy way to do both is I noticed that I love music. I especially love classic rock. And I realized that on my commute to work or home, as much as I love music, sometimes it's good to just turn the music off and just be still and silent in the car while you're driving. And you can still think and you can still make plans or whatever. But that's a really easy opportunity where you don't have to feel weird about it and you can just be still and silent all at once. And everybody has some kind of commute where they can do that.
And one thing I love about the stillness and silence that's connecting for me right now is when we go back, whatever that looks like in the fall, and if we
Right.
have children with us again, we all need to practice that stillness and quietness because those kids are coming to us and we're coming back having survived a trauma where we didn't
Absolutely.
expect this, we didn't want it. And so I can just see like setting a time if you're secondary, the beginning of each period, just give a couple minutes. Start with 30 seconds. 30 seconds is like a long
Yes.
time if you've never done it before.
Yes.
But you can
You're
build
you're
up
absolutely right.
the children's ability to hone into that silence and that stillness. And so I that just popped in my head when I was listening. I was like, it's going to be so important.
Yeah, it absolutely will calm the students down too. And if you do it with them, and there's all kinds of opportunities at school at recess or lunch or break or after school or before school where you can just take a little time. And like you said, we think like we need to, take a week trip to Hawaii or something to calm down. And we don't. It's 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. That's all you need. Couple minutes, 3 deep breaths sometimes is
Yeah.
all it takes, right? But I'm glad you brought that up too, Kara, because the other reason I wanted to do the 5 S's is so that everybody would have tools when we emerge out of whatever this is, because the new normal is going to be different than what we left. And
Yeah.
like you said, we've all gone through some very, very challenging times, and I think these strategies will help. So moving on to space, we've all heard of Marie Kondo. We've all heard of hold things and ask if they give you joy, and if they don't, get rid of them. But just the idea of decluttering, of the fact that we are a culture of material objects and stuff, and so many things that we don't need to have around. And so I would just encourage you to think about what can you get rid of. I'm not saying get rid of things that you care about or that have sentimental value or that give you joy, like Marie Kondo says, but we all have that drawer, that just the junk drawer. We all have that countertop. We all have that closet, and I try not to be very woo-woo with these, but I absolutely believe in this case that if you declutter and you create space in your life, in your house, in your mind, which we're going to get to in a minute, you are opening up just this incredible breathing room and this liberation and this freedom for the universe to bring you more of what you want. I firmly believe that. And so I'm a big fan of decluttering. I used to be a total pack rat. As a drama major and an actor, I would keep everything going, oh, I might use it in a play one day, right? Or I might need that as a costume piece, or I might need that as a character thing, right? And then I got rid of all that junk. And then when I started this about 5 years ago, I said, I don't need all of that stuff. If I need something, I'll get it when I need it, right? I want space, okay? So I like the concept that I wrote a blog post called Just One Thing, because people think they need to purge everything, or you go out in your garage like I would do and look at it and go, oh my gosh, that's so daunting. I can't do that today. I only have one day. Well, it's not about doing everything at once. It's about looking at my calendar, looking at my garage, looking at my drawer and saying, what one thing can I do right now? And you can declutter physical space, like I talked about. You can declutter mental space, even old philosophies and teaching practices and teaching modalities and methods that aren't working for you anymore. We keep them in there because they're familiar. But what if you just jettisoned them? What if you just got rid of them and said, then open up all that mental space? Look at your schedule, the calendar, the kitchen calendar that runs everything. Take one thing off, not 5 things or 12 things, just one thing. And you've created a little pocket of white space, a little pocket of time that you can either fill it with something that fulfills you, or guess what? And this is totally okay. You can fill it with nothing and just let that time be and let life go how it's going to go, which is my favorite thing in the world to do. You can declutter I kind of touched on this, but your philosophical ideas and the ideas that are not serving you anymore. And you can declutter your electronic spaces. I hope nobody gets a look into my Google Drive because it's insanity. It's like Dante's levels of hell, because I didn't understand Google Drive when it first came out. We started using it. I didn't know what it was for. I didn't know how it was going to be used. And so I have 10 years of junk in there, and like I'm like, oh, it's crazy. But if you want, you could take 10 minutes a day and just start cleaning that stuff out, and you would feel, just a little bit of relief, a little bit of breathing room, and you would feel better. Subtraction. This is one of my favorite ones. This is my favorite one of the 5 S's. And it's kind of like what I was just talking about before. We love to add things, and especially in education, admin, district, state, keep adding. And you don't have any control over that usually. So look at your own teaching practice. Look at the things that you do have control over and just subtract something. Just take something away. Personally, I always say, you've been going to that book club for 6 months and you just don't like it anymore? Stop going. They'll understand. You don't want to be on that church committee anymore? Tell them that you don't want to do it anymore. God will understand. I promise. It's not going to be a problem, right? We feel all of this guilt, the shame, the obligation, the responsibility, but we don't have to feel that for all of the things, right? So pick 1 or 2 things that you can just subtract from your schedule, from your mind, from your activities, from whatever is making you feel stressed out, and it's going to give you a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, I know as a teacher, I resisted going completely electronic for my data collection for way longer than I should have resisted that. And partly is because I just like to have it in paper. I like to be able to grab those folders, go with me, open them up on a table. I love to take them to conferences and show them to parents. But when I sat down one time, when you talk about that add to, and something has to go, and I was like, the amount of time I was taking out of instruction for kids to fill in the data, or out of my time for me to fill in the data, it just wasn't worth it. And I finally decided, okay, I'm going to make this shift. And what do you know, lo and behold, I found 45% of my time back. Like I cut my time, I tracked it, and I cut my time by 45% when I did that. And guess what? I didn't get in trouble because I didn't have a data folder. And parents like seeing it on the computer just as much as any place else. And oh my gosh, it was so freeing to me. But we hold on to things because that's the way we've always did it, and we like it and it works. But we have a hard time thinking, but maybe there's something that works better. And resist that change. So I love that.
Right. And I say in the book here, when we eliminate instead of add, we find more time, energy, and money to fill our space and time with activities that fulfill us. So that's the benefit. That's the outcome. And like you said, you save 45% of your time, and you could choose to fill that up with things you liked better or with nothing at all, like I said. And you also reminded me of how when I started this and the book came out, I took everything off my classroom walls because I just thought, well, I'm going to start fresh. And I'm not going to put anything up until I decide what I want up. But then I decided I kind of liked it. But you know what, Kara? It ruffled some feathers. Yes. People got anxious about it. And one day I walked in, and it was like I'd forgotten something on Friday, and I walked in on Saturday, and another teacher in my department had snuck in over the weekend and put up pictures up on my walls. It was hilarious. And I knew exactly who did it because he's a friend of mine, but he just couldn't take it.
Yeah.
And he has kind of an artsy streak, and he went to the thrift store, and he bought like these still lifes and a landscape, and he just hung them on my walls just to be funny. And so I kept him up there for a couple of years just to, humor him and show him that I thought it was funny. But yeah, people are not used to that,
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
and there's
just
probably kids sitting there that needed that blank space to look at to help them be more productive. Our
I think
walls,
so.
I think in secondary they're busy, but then if you have you ever walked in a kindergarten room, like I don't think there's like a
Yeah.
square inch of space that doesn't have
No.
some word or color that the kids are learning, and I'm like, it overwhelms me, and I think
Oh yes.
it
It's like
overwhelms the kids
Disneyland,
too at
sensory
times.
overload. Yeah, it definitely can be too much. So just think about areas that you can subtract. And again, not saying you have to get rid of things you like or that are working for your students, and you don't have to have completely white walls like I did. But like Kara's saying, is there stuff that's been up, since the Eisenhower administration that you just go, I don't need this anymore. Just take it down. Just take it down. Free up a little breathing room for you. And then finally, let's talk about the idea of slowing down. Again, the pace of this culture is relentless, absolutely relentless. And we don't remember what it's like to go slowly. And there's nothing wrong with going slowly. And I understand the analogy I use sometimes is if I'm driving on the freeway and I think, Dan said I should go slowly, so I'm going to go to 25 miles an hour in the freeway, you're going to be mowed over, So that's not a good plan. But there are times when, you just like let's use this as an example. This morning when I got up, or even in this distance learning, or sometimes in summer, there are days when I don't have as much on the books, and so I really enjoy just kind of getting out of bed when I want, kind of puttering around the kitchen, making my coffee, sitting at the table and drinking it. And again, people who, if they were to watch that, would go, God, what a lazy bones, get up, you got stuff to do. But just that idea of going slow on some things is really helpful and can reduce that stress. And then you go back to the pace that you need to go to be productive and get your things done. But it refills the tank, which I think is the part that we forget. The old saying is you can't pour from an empty cup. And I always say teachers are such givers. They will not only empty their cup if a student or a colleague or a spouse or their own children need the cup, they'll give the cup too.
Yeah.
And my job is to get you to get your cup back, and then hopefully to put some good things
I
inside of
like
it.
to say we got to get over this martyr syndrome. We are not
Oh,
martyrs. We
absolutely.
are teachers, and we're
Yeah.
made to feel guilty if we're not busy, or we don't have 100 pieces of student work on the walls, or whatever it is. If we don't have the data wall that somebody wants to see, and if we don't find a way to stand up for what we know is right. And now we've been given this blessing of, hey, guess what? We finished this school year without standardized testing and nobody died. Like,
Imagine that.
we
Yeah.
have an unprecedented opportunity to voice what it meant for us to be able to meet the social emotional needs of our kids, and
Absolutely. And
help. And
ourselves.
that's part of slowing down. That's
Yes.
part of what we need. And I think if we ever had an opportunity, this is it, that teachers could make a voice, and that most administrators would be willing to hear that in light of what we just came through.
Right, right. I totally agree with you. And at some point, I had to let go of the expectation of that martyr syndrome because I lived most of my career with it, thinking that, well, I'm not a good teacher if I'm not giving until I'm spent. But you know what I learned, and this is going to sound more cynical than I intend, but what I've seen, and one of the reasons that we lost 3 teachers in my department in the space of 2 or 3 years, is because in general, this particular system will use you up and then discard you, and they don't really care because there's somebody else who will do it because it is such an important job. So I try to share these strategies from a place of, and I totally agree with you that, they've called this the great pause
Yeah.
because it's a chance to reflect and decide how we want to go back. But I try to present these from this standpoint of there's so much we can't change, but there are things we can change in ourselves and with what we have control over.
Yeah.
So what choices are you going to make yourself that's independent of the district, independent of a principal, independent of a state mandate, whatever? What do you have in control of your day? You have 24 hours that you can say, I'm going to choose to spend it this way. Because while we are teachers, and I think of this as a personal calling, it's a very spiritual thing to me, but it is not who I am. It's part of who I am. It's a huge part of who I am. But I'm more than just being a teacher. And I need to fill that tank again and keep myself in a good place, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all of that. And I think the easiest entryway to that that I found is these 5 S's. So I'm just going to kind of share a couple other slides, and we can chat if you like. The quote I have for slowing down is that single tasking is the secret weapon of effective teachers. Teachers think that we should multitask, but all the research says that focusing on one thing actually makes you more productive because you make fewer mistakes. You don't have to go back and redo things as much, and the quality of what you do is higher. So I'm going to encourage you, it's not always possible, but I'm going to encourage you, when you are doing a task, do that task and be there with that task. So there you have it, the 5 S's: stillness, silence, space, subtraction, and slowing down. They are actually things I learned after writing the Zen Teacher, and they are in my book called Sanctuaries. And so I want to thank you for listening and for being you and doing what you do. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, here's my website, my Twitter handle, and my email. And I love helping teachers, love hearing from teachers. So if you have any questions, just let me know, and we'll go from there.
I appreciate
and then
you
I'm going to go boom, 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 all the way back.
It's fine.
There we go.
I appreciate so much what you shared. And what the people out there don't know is that, like, Dan and I had never met before until we did this video chat to get to know each other and talk about him being part of my event. But, like, everything we say just bounced off each other. And I know, like, if you're young and you're in your first 10 years, you think, what are you people talking about? Like, I'll never get burnt out, or I'll never feel that way. But we didn't go into it feeling that way either. And we both hit it at about the same time. At about year 25 was when we both were feeling completely in our own corners, not knowing that other people were going through the same thing, because enough teachers aren't or weren't sharing about this, what happens when you hit 25 and how can you do your best to the end, because doing less doesn't mean not doing my best. And I know that Dan would agree with that as well. I want to be the most effective teacher I can, but I want to do that in the best way possible so that I'm not burnt out and my kids aren't getting the leftover of me in the classroom and my family's not getting the leftover. Nobody has to get my leftover, because I don't feel burnt out like that. And so I just appreciate this conversation being brought to light. And I love the 5 S's, although I have to say my favorite was the 6th S, which was single tasking. That didn't count as one of your main S's. I love that word. Word,
it's really important.
Yes, we need that to be common vocabulary. I did some mindfulness training years ago, and that was the one thing that they tried to train you to do, is just focus on the one thing you're doing in the moment. And I thought, what one thing? I'm 20.
I've got 70 things I'm doing.
Yes, so I have gotten better at that, and it really eases my anxiety in thinking I have this whole list of things to get done, but what can I do right now if I have 5 minutes or I have 15 minutes? So it's so important, and I appreciate that message being out to everybody, and I hope they grasp it. And you have a free gift as well that you want to talk about.
Yes, I'm offering everybody a 14-page PDF workbook called The 7 Self-Care Secrets for Stressed Out Teachers. And Kara's going to put a link where you can just drop in your email address. It will be sent right to you. And it talks about some of the 5 S's are in there, and talks about how to develop what I call your Zen practice, which is that it's kind of like a hobby, but it's more than that. It's that thing that you do that fulfills you and rejuvenates you, and that you get so lost in it that when your friend calls on the phone, you're like, oh, sorry, I was doing the thing and I lost track of time. For some people it's gardening, or for me it's writing. For some people, it's, kayaking or quilting or singing, whatever it is. So just different ways that you can, lower that stress and improve your self-care so you're taking better care of you, because it's really important because we want you to make it through.
So it's an actionable item. I looked at it, and you're able to actually take action with it. So those of us who aren't so good at, oh, I got these 5S's, great, and then I go on to the next day, I have no idea what I learned about or listened to
Yep.
until I look back at my notes 2 years later and it's like, oh yeah, I was going to do that. But the PDF gift that he's sharing is actionable, and it's something you can do right now. And I hope you take advantage of it. Thanks so much, Dan, for joining me.
Sure. Yeah,
Bye
this was fun. Thank
bye.
you for having me. Bye.